Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to the Bocce Piles channel. And so, well, this is a league that I had to re-record the audio because the noise gate was being all messed up. So doing some voiceovers after the fact here, sped up the recording slightly. So we'll see how this goes. But this is the latest Terrageddon version. Yeah, we're playing some Werebears. And so I cut Nimble Mongoose, which is really good against the red decks mostly. And I think those matchups are pretty favorable, so we can afford to do this. And then what the Werebear does is it helps make these Thornscape Battlemages more acceptable or much stronger in the metagame. And what the deck really needs is a couple more main deck answers to the Phyrexian Dreadnought. So yeah, we're going to be playing this Thornscape Battlemage build. We're kind of going big. The main deck Seal of Cleansings are great. Yeah, we're playing for Armageddon. Yeah, Thornscape Battlemage. it's an all-star here. And then basically the same sideboard before. There was a Thornscape Battlemage in the sideboard. We're going to try a Sylvan Safekeeper here, which can maybe do the job that Nimble Mongoose would do and like protect our Terravores against like Replenish or a blue-white control deck. Yeah, and otherwise it's the standard sideboard. So we're going to get into the league here any moment. Alright, so this hand looking pretty decent. Let's see, we got the turn 1 Sylvan Library. Seems like a keep. Opponent starts on basic island. You gotta be thinking Phyrexian Dreadnought here. Slam the Mox Diamond, slam the Sylvan Library. Makes sense. Opponent just does nothing. It's always an encouraging sign. Are we gonna be great and pay 8? I think so. Right off the back here, we're being great. Yeah, Weathered Wayfarer makes sense. Probably just going to cycle this Tranquil Thicket on our opponent's end step and hope to draw more lands off this Sylvan Library. Yeah, they just quickly go to their end step and don't play a land. That seems like good news for us. There's a Windswept Heath. So we probably don't need to draw all these cards. It's a lot of what we already have. So let's see, are we going to like jam Terravore here or just Seal of Cleansing? It is jam Terravore. Yeah, because we're not likely to be able to activate the Wayfarer anyway. The opponent's discarding an accumulated knowledge, which would seem to support that we're playing against Dreadnought here. We got 4 mana, so probably Seal plus Werebear would make sense. Getting in for 5 first, though, is a good order of operations. And there's the Seal of Cleansing. Opponent's still discarding. We're going to be beating them down for a pretty tremendous amount. So let's see, in this spot we're awfully close to getting Threshold. Just jam another Terravore, that makes sense. Cycle Tranquil Thicket. So you could do some shenanigan where we seal our own library or Mox Diamond to try to get Threshold. But that still doesn't kill them this turn, and they're dead next turn. These Lotus Petals are a concerning turn of events. Show and tell. Okay. What are they going to put into play? A Dream Halls. So having the seal in play already is pretty good here. So they've only got 3 cards in hand. So it's kind of hard to imagine losing. Yeah, there's no reason to not go to 2. Armageddon's going to get us to Threshold and grow these Terravores to epic proportions. And so here's an attack for a Bazillion. I guess we don't need to send the Werebears. They go for the Meditate, and they can't sacrifice a card. Or they don't have 2 cards to discard. Well, they need 1 card to discard and then 1 card to play another draw spell. So that sure does it. Yeah, and we're going to board in a bunch of Red Blasts and Ray of Revelation to answer Dream Halls and Phyrexian Furnace just to reduce the impact of accumulated knowledge. Yeah, we don't really need like the Thornscape Battlemages or the Swords of Plowshares. It's pretty intuitive, I think. And this is like another great turn 1 library hand, so hard to go wrong with this. Yeah, another turn 1 library. That's what we like to do. So the Surprise and Scary is a little scary. We don't want them to untap with that. We do hit the Wasteland. So we're probably going to like Wasteland them and play the Phyrexian Furnace here. We are great and pay 8. It's always good. Just not a deck that threatens our life total. Here comes the Furnace. You could develop the Terravore, but I mean, they only need 3 mana to play Show and Tell. And so limiting their options, pretty clutch. They do get out the Balin's Tomb, aka Ancient Tomb. Now we're not going to be able to affect their mana. Still no reason not to pay all the life that we can. We're shrinking a potential Terravore, but the plan here is probably just to win with Werebear anyway. And then get out this other Phyrexian Furnace, why not? We might need to cycle these. Yeah, so we don't activate Phyrexian Furnace there because then we lack targets to exile with Furnace so that we can get closer to Threshold. This Ray of Revelation's a great draw against any potential, Dream Halls, and then this Armageddon is pretty game ending. We'll set our opponent back to 0. And then get to deploy a giant Terravore next turn. We're going after their graveyard. So I guess we're not super concerned about having Terravore be as big as possible. Yeah, and we're just going to cash in a Furnace here. Just trying to get Threshold for this Werebear. Mox Diamond here is Wasteland's a great draw. Yeah, so now we're going to have Threshold and a second Werebear. Beating down for 8 a turn. Surprise and Scary is not really going to change anything. We could play an Armageddon for funsies. Well, yeah, we'd have to tap our Werebears though, so we probably just want to attack. So this Seal of Cleansing, we can put into play off of a Show and Tell, which is like our opponent's best hope to win, and then we still have the Raise backup. So we're going to have access to 2 disenchant effects. You could not attack with a Werebear, so you could have like 3 with a Ray of Revelation flashback. But I think it is better just to try to get our opponent dead, and that's what works. On to round 2. I believe that my opponent plays a lot of blue-white land still, which looks like it's going to be the case based off this basic island. But this opt suggests that something else is going on. And they just don't play a land. That's cool. So we're going to... I see. Yeah, so we're trying to hold up the fetch land, hold priority sack, and activate Wayfarer. Instead, we get nothing. We'll redeploy the Wayfarer. It eats a counterspell. So we don't want to play the second Wayfarer there because we'd have to have double white. The second Wayfarer gets counterspelled on our next turn. We'd be cutting ourselves off of green there if we tried to play the second one. But now we're have a Werebear going. We have an answer to Dreadnought. I think we want to develop a Sylvan Library here and be trying to find more answers, even though it's not the most mana efficient play. I guess we're technically holding up Swords to Plowshares with our mana. A thwart. Cool. So let's get in with a Werebear. Wasteland. Let's just play stuff around days. Slam an Armageddon, but that would get us Threshold, but not really where we want to be. Probably just play a Terravore here. Holding up the white mana. No, we're playing Call of the Herd. I guess, I see. So we're getting to Threshold by just using the Wasteland on ourselves there. I'm getting in for 4, and we're just not really going to worry about Terravore. They mill themselves with Vision Charm. It's a little surprising. But, I mean, they know the top cards from their library, and they milled like an accumulated knowledge there. So probably their plan is to play some AKs. But we're clocking them pretty hard. So our play makes sense here. Like, a Terravore doesn't really change the math. So, well, it is a 4/4. That's bigger than the elephant token now. So maybe it would have made sense to play the Terravore last turn. Phyrexian Dreadnought, Stifle. See, they're at 8 life, though, so this just isn't a very scary spot. And this Thornscape Battlemage is a great draw here. So they're going to have to answer this, and they're still not really able to crack back with their Phyrexian Dreadnought. The opponent is playing Daze, which you don't see so much in lists anymore. They're just playing Thwart, a solo Thwart, more than, I don't know, 1 or 2 Dazes. We can just add to the board some more here and hold up Swords to Plowshares. The opponent does gain a bunch of life if we end up sorting this Dreadnought, which is a little unfortunate, but we still have a big board, and yeah, they're not really able to attack. They do have the second Dreadnought, though. So are we going to like fearlessly play into Daze? I think so, just because we only have the white one white mana source, so we gotta use it. Do give it some consideration, though. Here I am contemplating how much life they're going to gain off these swords is. Gush in response. They don't have anything. Okay. So we get to swords them again, cycle the Tranquil Thicket, and start beating in for a whole bunch. Yeah, cycling the Tranquil Thicket gets us to 16 damage a turn. I think I'm pondering the possibility of playing another Call of the Herd. Draw another Tranquil Thicket. So it doesn't really change the combat math. Doesn't hurt either, though. And then Rishadan Port's going to lock them pretty hard, because they're not going to get to 2 mana on their next turn. So this is like my standard sideboarding Dreadnought against Dreadnought. You don't really need Terravore, 4 of them. They're kind of big and chunky. Gotta mulligan that hand. This hand, well, it has an answer to a Dreadnought. 2 answers to a Dreadnought. So pretty decent. Play the Phyrexian Furnace, start working on their graveyard, but it eats in a null. That's cool. They do have a turn 2 Dreadnought. 3 cards in hand. So this Mox Diamond's a pretty good draw. It's going to let us develop the Werebear and Swords to Plowshares on their upkeep. And then we're just hoping to find a 4th land when they counter the Swords to Plowshares to play the Thornscape Battlemage. Another Werebear. We actually have the 4 mana already because the Werebear's in play, of course. We're a long way from Threshold, so we're just beating in for 1. Draw another removal. Yeah, that opponent's life total has a long way to go. Powder Keg. So this is probably going to end up eating our Werebears, which is a little unfortunate. So we could pick off that Powder Keg here or save it to answer a Dreadnought. And see what Cycling the Tranquil Thicket reveals. We're going to opt to save our Thornscape Battlemage to deal with a potential Phyrexian Dreadnought. Opponent plays a Gush. No follow-up. Oh yeah, and we still have the option to play Thornscape Battlemage here to pick off the Powder Keg this turn. That's a fair decision. They do have the counter spell. And we'll get in the Furnace rather than beating for 1. Maybe try to tempt them to pop that keg on the furnace. Not much chance of that happening, though. Land is not a very exciting draw here. Another Gush. Portent targets themselves. They take the shuffle. There's a Tranquil Thicket. Sylvan Library. That's a pretty good draw. See if we can get this to resolve. We can't. Sabo's Web. Well, we've designed our deck to not really care about Sabo's Web. And they are going to stifle this fetch land. So it's a good time to try to resolve this Terravore, but they have another counterspell. Rishadan Port, not super exciting into our opponent's Sabo's Web. So Sabo's Web is doing something, but we're not exactly blown out. We've got plenty of mana to work with. Even more mana to work with now. Phyrexian Dreadnought. We do have a Swords to Plowshares here. Let's see if this resolves. There's a counterspell. So we're going to try to rip a Red Blast here off the Phyrexian Furnace draw. That's just what we hit. That's pretty exciting. Let the Swords to Plowshares resolve, or get countered, I mean, so that they don't gain a bunch of life. Go after the Vision Charm, but they have the foil. Another Wasteland's a pretty poor draw. That's why we board out most of them. But you just got to keep in some Wastelands to keep your land count high enough for Mox Diamond to be functional. And we don't get there. Run it back for game 3. This looks like a pretty promising hand on the play. Got some answers. Don't have any red for this Pyroblast, but we can go Phyrexian Furnace into Werebear. I don't see any reason to just walk that Seal of Cleansing into an annul. In essence, Flare is certainly going to slow down this Werebear. Might as well deploy the Seal of Cleansing. Seal of Cleansing, just being able to jam it in that spot, you know, looking pretty good compared to a Naturalize where you'd have to wait for them to resolve a Phyrexian Dreadnought and maybe have their counter magic. We get aggressive with Armageddon, hoping they don't have Gush. They do have Gush, though. So, you know, maybe that wasn't the best. There's probably no reason why we couldn't just sit back and sit on Pyroblast there. So that was pretty greedy. Especially where we just don't have a threat in play. So maybe, you know, I should reconsider the sideboarding to try to not have 3 Armageddons. The occasional Armageddon can be really backbreaking. But we make it all right here and manage to draw a couple lands. And now we can start sequencing into some Werebears. It would just be bad news if the opponent could land a Dreadnought. So are we just going to be fearless and jam the Werebear? Now we're holding up double Pyroblast. That seems pretty responsible. Do want to try to Pyroblast like almost anything at this point where we've got 2 of them. Or at least if they play like a good, I guess a Gush or... I mean, they're not about to play an AK for 3 here. Werebear gets kegged. Weathered Wayfarer is a nice draw. And here's a good spot to use a Red Blast here. Get out the Wayfarer. And our opponent has a bunch more lands than us. There's the Return of the Web. So we'll see if we can play around this. Yeah, Wasteland, not a great draw, but we can go to work with this Wayfarer against that web. Gemstone Mine, you know, can play Red Blast or anything else. It doesn't slow us down like Risk Grove, and it dies to help ensure more Wayfarer activations. So Swords is a pretty decent draw. We've got a bunch of answers to a Dreadnought. So if they played a Dreadnought here, what you could just do is untap and then, you know, use your Swords to protect it. Or use the Red Blast to protect the Swords, I mean. They don't play a Dreadnought though, so we'll cycle this Tranquil Thicket. There's the return of Armageddon. So probably want to get the Wayfarer going some more. And we're just rolling these Gemstone Mines. Really just shrugging off the Sabo's Web here. Opponent slams an Opt. Cycle a Tranquil Thicket. Another answer to a Dreadnought. Keep working the Furnace. We're pretty okay. Just paying life to activate the Battlefield Forge here and holding up our Gemstone Mines. Mox Diamond is an interesting one. So maybe we're going to just jam Armageddon here. Grab the Tranquil Thicket. Soon it will be time to Armageddon, but not yet. I think maybe I just misclicked on my opponent's end step there and didn't activate the Tranquil Thicket. But the opponent has a sensational amount of lands out here. So, yeah, we're just going to keep on activating this Wayfarer. We're out of Tranquil Thickets. So we'll get a Risk Grove, I think, here to try to set up playing Armageddon. Now, having the Sylvan Library in play would be great. For the post-Armageddon. They just go ahead with the counterspell. We'll try a Red Blast. Another counterspell. Well, we've got many answers to Dreadnought, so we probably want to continue to fight over the Sylvan Library. Losing a Gemstone Mine's no problem. They have the third counterspell, so I guess that's what they have instead of Phyrexian Dreadnoughts. Recycle the Battlefield Forge. Yeah, so I'm pretty I have designs on going for an Armageddon here. Trying to figure out how many Gushes they've played. Another library. Well, that'd be a good one to have in play for the post-Armageddon. They go for the foil. And now I think we're just going to tap out and play Armageddon. And here's where I'm just noticing how much clock I've used and that I'm under 5 minutes. It is go time on this get-in. Will it resolve? Yes, and they don't have Gush. So that puts us in a pretty good spot. And then if they play a land here, we get a Wayfarer activation, but they don't play a land. So we do have this Terravore to look forward to if we can just hit one more land. We get the white source because we might need to jam a bunch of white sources to answer Phyrexian Dreadnought. But we just rip the next land like a champ. And now I've got a 25-25 Terravore. And that's how you beat Mono Blue Dreadnought. Going into round 3, we're going to be on the play. It's like a decent enough hand. We can play the turn 2 library. Mog Fanatic. So I don't know if it's like Sly or Goblins here. And this is where I run into a spot of bother with the MTGO interface. Because I have my escape key as like my record key on the OBS. And so I hit escape to try to get the recording going, but I accidentally go through the Risk Grove trigger. And so I just have to lamely play a Weathered Wayfarer here, which quickly gets picked off. So they play a Veteran Brawlers. The good news here is we can Wasteland this Rishadan Port and hopefully keep this Plains untapped. So here comes the Wasteland. So is our opponent gonna rip a follow-up Rishadan Port like a champ? Yes, they are. But we can Wasteland this one as well. And keep this Veteran Brawlers at bay. Unless they have a third port. But it's just a Mishra's Factory. Here's a Grim Lavamancer. I mean, it's definitely a spot where a Mongoose could like hold off our opponent's board a bit. You know, not eat it to Grim Lavamancer. And like if we want to play this Werebear, it's gonna set up my opponent's Veteran Brawlers. It would be nice to have this Sylvan Library in play, but also their opponent's a red deck and can threaten our life total. So we just go for a Werebear. I think I meant to play Sylvan Library there and misclicked. And now we're really behind. Just trying to do some narrating and playing. And so here's another Werebear, which we could give Threshold to, but and we don't do that either. Probably should have. That wasn't a great play. So just a comedy of misplays here. I think it's time to scoop it up. But I guess we're gonna play Sylvan Library. Do one more lap here. So we can swords after attackers and get a draw step here. We have to get the other planes. Yeah, the Mishra's Factory is less mana to activate and the obvious swords target there. And now we're at 3 life with no green sources. And so I was trying to figure out how many Pyroclasms I want against this deck. I do like Furnaces against Grim Lavamancers. Seal of Cleansing probably not having any targets. Zuran Orb is good for sacking lands. We might as well sack them if they're getting, you know, pillaged. Yeah, definitely trimming on Armageddons versus a land destruction deck makes sense. And then we're going to trim a Werebear, where they, you know, mostly eat it to Mog Fanatic in the early game. And then I decide that, in light of that, we'll just play some Pyroclasms, as they do play both Mog Fanatic and Grim Lavamancers as potential targets. Obviously, the Pyroclasm not doing much against the Veteran Brawlers. This hand's a little slow, but we can slow our opponent down with Port and eventually land an Armageddon. Thornscape Battlemage looking pretty solid against their Cursed Scroll. And so this Rishadan Port can come in and really limit our opponent's turn 2. I guess I want to cycle that Tranquil Thicket off of Mox Diamond, but I don't really want to discard Wasteland or Windswept Heath. But there's a Terravore. So now I want to Wasteland the Gate to Encampment. And probably should have just played Mox Diamond, discarding the Thicket and drop the Terravore. But instead, I'll play 2 Mox Diamonds and get out a 5/5 Terravore. Seems pretty tough for our opponent to beat. The opponent's going to punish our second Mox Diamond by pillaging it, though. So that doesn't feel good. But we do get to attack for 5. Get this elephant token going. Then they really punish us with a second pillage. But they're also spending their turn doing nothing, and we're going to be beating them down for 8. And we still get to slow them down with this Rishadan Port. And if they want to like Wasteland our Port, it really grows the Terravore to epic proportions. The concern here is if they have like Tormod's Crypt, they can crypt us, and then our Terravore is a 1/1. And it just takes a Mog Fanatic to pick off the Terravore. They incinerated the Werebear and the upkeep. Oh, sorry, the elephant token. Get in for 5, and we can just sacrifice our last 2 to make it 7. Opponent sees the writing on the wall. I don't think we're making any changes going into game 3. Think about cutting a Mox Diamond in light of the pillages, but Pyroclasm just isn't that effective against what they're doing. Alright, so Weathered Wayfarer is what you like to see against land destruction strategies, especially on the draw. Not so great against Mog Fanatic, though. They do have to burn an Incinerate on it. It's a pretty good trade for us. Play this library onto an empty board. A Veteran Brawlers. I mean, that's pretty decent, but it's going to be tough to get for our opponent to tap us out. It's a question of how many cards you want to draw against the red deck. Like Wasteland and Terravore are both pretty exciting draws. We do already have a Terravore in hand. We definitely want to Wasteland that port. And then we can get in this Furnace. So I think we just want to pop the Crypt on the Incinerate. But I decided against it because it's going to tap us out here and let them attack with the Veteran Brawlers. They go for a Stone Rain on our Forest. So it means that Veteran Brawlers can get in anyway. And maybe I should have taken that free cycle. But Mox Diamond is going to kind of redeem us here. And shoot us up to 3 mana. And I'm thinking about whether I want to keep the Terravore. Because if we want to sacrifice the Windswept Heath to grow the Terravore, we're going to need to... And get to, not shuffle away the other Terravore. We're going to need to pay 4 life. So that's what we do. I mean, the Ponza version of the deck just doesn't have that much reach. Though they do have that Shivan Gorge in play, which is pretty cool. Pyroclasm. Maybe will be good at some point. But I think we just want to jam another Terravore here. Which can block their Veteran Brawlers. Get in for 6. Slam another Terravore. So the opponent does have an opportunity to attack if they want. They play an Avalanche Riders. Now that's going to grow the Terravore. We are going to get to sweep their board with a Pyroclasm here. If they ping the Terravore with a Mog Fanatic, and then, so yeah, it's 2 plus 4 for the Veteran Brawlers. So they might be able to kill a Terravore here. Yeah, 2 from Pyroclasm, 1 from Fanatic, and then 4 from Veteran Brawlers. But they go for the Dome with the Mog Fanatic. And if they just pop the Mog Fanatic and target the Terravore, I probably just don't attack with that one. As it is, though, we can just attack with both, and they're forced into a block here because they're at 14, and that's how much we're attacking for. The Avalanche Riders is only able to soak up 2 damage, and they go to 2 life, and they see the writing on the wall. On to round 4. It's a pretty decent hand. These are the things you want to see. We got like an Answer, Weathered Wayfarer. Rishadan Port can slow our opponent down. Play a tasty little Wasteland target for us. But we do kick it off with a Wayfarer. I mean, it is a really strong one to have in play. The opponent does not have the Swords to Plowshares, and they just go for basic Plains and pass. When they do nothing like that, you got to start thinking Replenish. We'll get a Wayfarer activation in, and we're just going to chain together Wastelands. The Rishadan Port backing it all up pretty strong too. So now we have a choice if we want to port them or activate Wayfarer, or maybe just play this Werebear or another Werebear or Wayfarer or Port are the options. Like activate Wayfarer plus play Wayfarer. These are the options I'm contemplating. It might just be jam Werebear here. We have Wasteland and Port in hand already. So this Wayfarer activation, not too important. Getting the Werebear into play increases our options. Opponent discards Deep Analysis to Frantic Search. Wasteland looking strong again. And then we get to develop a pretty big Terravore here. And the way our opponent's mana is, they don't have double white to do anything too exciting with. So they can only play Attunement. And now I'm thinking about if we can get to Threshold. And yeah, I think we can if we sacrifice the Windswept Heath. Cycle the Tranquil Thicket. Swords our own Wayfarer. And now we're attacking for 15. Sideboarding against Replenish. Yeah, I mean, Terravore is not super important. It's not really what the game's about. It's more about like not losing to Exalted Angel and like playing Armageddon. So yeah, we got to keep in a couple swords. We're trying out Sylvan Library to maybe, Sylvan Safekeeper to maybe protect our boys. So this hand here is like all right. We have a turn 2 library, a bunch of ways to blow up their mana base. Flooded Strand into Artikar Wastes. So that's going to be a target for Wasteland. Meddling Mage, okay. So we could play Sylvan Library, but yeah, definitely cycle the Tranquil Thicket first. Hoping to find like a red or a white mana, but we don't. And so I am just going to be like Wastelanding and porting them down here and see what their situation is with the mana. Play a Seal of Cleansing, which makes the library even less exciting. Wasteland the Tomb. They're probably in a rough spot with their mana. If they played the Ancient Tomb there to play the Seal of Cleansing, it kind of suggests they don't have any more lands. And they kind of, yeah, they just disconnect and don't come back. So this is a trophy match. My opponent is playing the Survival Goblins list. Now, because they're playing Survival, they only play 2 Mog Fanatics. So this turn 1 Wayfarer looking pretty decent. And also their mana base plays a lot of non-basics. It is kind of questionable, though, where we don't have like answers to anything. Other than like this Armageddon. But we'll go ahead and play the Wayfarer. And yeah, we hold back on Wasteland to try to get this Wayfarer activation. And if we get to activate Wayfarer, we're going to be in a really good spot. And that's just what happens. So maybe like a Rishadan Port here is pretty good to play out of Mox. The opponent did nothing on turn 1, so this port is looking pretty promising. Sylvan Library, pretty nice one. So we can activate the Wayfarer. And we're just playing Mox Diamonds for free here, like they're real Moxes, basically, thanks to the Wayfarer. Gemstone Mine's a pretty free one to discard. And now we get to play Library plus Hold Up Port. Opponent's remarking on our insane draw. And it's safe to say that, you know, it worked out pretty well. Port the opponent on the upkeep. They got a Pile Driver. Lowland Pile Driver's not too scary. We're going to get to Wasteland that Carplusian Forest and port them again. Swords to Plowshares is a nice pickup. They're really not going to be able to threaten our life total very effectively. I think we're just grabbing a Tranquil Thicket. No, Windswept Heath. Oh, we're just going to play an Armageddon. While they've played more lands than us and hold up this Windswept Heath. They get out a Lackey. Yeah, you can attack for 1 with Goblin Pile Driver. I think we want to Swords this Lackey. No, we want to get our Wayfarer activation so we don't Swords in the end step. Terravore is a pretty good one. We don't need these extra lands. But it's the old hold priority. Activate Wayfarer. Get Wasteland. And the Windswept Heath resolves. Get to play Wasteland. And get out this Terravore. That's an 11/11. Yeah, that's a pretty good spot. Opponents remarking on our well-executed game plan. And, you know, that is what we did. So they're playing Survivals. So we're going to bring in the Ray of Revelation and the Furnaces. mean, the Wayfarers were strong, but Pyroclasm is definitely where we want to be in this matchup. Thornscape Battlemage is pretty expensive, and Sylvan Library is enticing, so we make some adjustments. I think so I go back on a Thornscape Battlemage here. I mean, the Werebear is not going to be great in the early game, most likely. All right, on the draw here. Well, this is a no-brainer mulligan. Opponent's keeping 7. Well, so here we were kind of hoping the opponent's on a survival hand. But they end up getting a basic forest and a Birds of Paradise. Pretty exciting that they did not get a red mana. Here's where I pulled up the deck list. Missing the survivals in that screenshot there, but you can see what's going on here. The old Goblins deck playing Birds of Paradise. Swords the bird, get out the furnace. Doesn't leave our opponent with too many options. And that's the tale of how Werebear and Thornscape Battlemage got us another trophy. So this list was pretty much executed the way we wanted it to. I mean, I think that Werebear and Thornscape Battlemage is a pretty good combo. And yeah, just the drawback of not having Meddling Mage to name Dreadnought is pretty well mitigated by Thornscape Battlemage there. Plus Werebear. So the one change I think I'm actually going to make is putting that 4th Weathered Wayfarer in the sideboard, which is just really good in some situations. And the Sylvan Safekeeper didn't do much, but I could see bringing in the Weathered Wayfarer. And that's pretty much it, folks. Thanks for watching.